We at Creative Youth Leadership Group would like to proudly introduce Tees Valley's Windrush Stories. The concept of the documentary came from our youth panel, where we quickly identified the lack of historical archives available to the generations that followed our Windrush pioneers. Join us as we honour the contributions of Tees Valley's Windrush generation.
My name's Georgina Chinaka. I'm married to a Zimbabwean, so when people see my surname, they tend to not realise that I am one of the Windrush descendants. So my maiden name is Stuart. I'm half Jamaican, half Guyanese. I have lived in the Northeast for about 20 years now and hardly ever come across any West Indian. So this is always nice. It's always so nice to come somewhere in Teesside, yeah, and feel a bit of home. So that's great. We kind of are in the minority. There's a growing Black community in Teesside, but for those with West Indian and Caribbean heritage, we are in the minority within that. So the Taste of Africa Foundation did put in a funding bid to the big lottery to create a documentary, actually, because just as Mrs. P said, there is a bit of invisibility around the Windrush generation locally, and there are so many untold stories, so much history that is not captured. And if we're not careful, it will be lost. So the aim of this event, and we had one in Middlesbrough the other day, is to really capture those stories, those that came then, their descendants, and everything that has happened in between, and hopefully will happen in the future.
Paris sees the arrival of more than 400 happy Jamaicans. They've come to seek work in Britain and are ready and willing to do any kind of job that will help the motherland along the road to prosperity. They're all full of hope for the future, so let's make them very welcome as they begin their new life over here.
How long have you lived around here for?
Long time. My mom died at a young age.
Okay.
The four of us.
Yeah.
3 boys, 1 girl.
Okay.
After a period of time, after my mom passed away, my dad, for some reason, decided to come to the UK because they wanted people from Jamaica to come to the UK to work, to build up this country. They wanted to split us up. My dad said no, my grandmother said no, so my grandmother brought us up. So after Dad came here, he got a job in the mine, or the pit, or whatever you call it, and he worked for a while until he could afford to send for me. Then, eventually, I came to England, 1967. It was really an experience, really, because I've never seen snow before. I've never been cold like that before. Because I remember arriving in America somewhere, because we had to change plane, and they gave us a long thing to wrap around our face. And I walk out on the gangplank, and I feel the cold. I turn back and I said to the girl, we reach England? She said, no. I said, Jesus Christ, if we don't reach it, it's so cold, we can't go. So, came to England, and Dad met me at the airport, and I said, smoker come out of the house then. He said, Dad, smoker come out of the house then. I said, how come in a burn down? Because back when we live in a board house, and I can't imagine you make a fire in a house and the house. He said, when you get inside, you'll be surprised. Which I were very surprised, because it was nicely decorated, fires there, and the house not burning down, etc., etc. And fortunately enough, my dad got me a job before I even came to Britain. I work at Bursdom Service Station. Paul and Malcolm was the boss, and then after a while I got redundant because they split up. And then I was at home, and then somebody came to me and said, you want a job? I got a better job working on mechanical work on these big lorries. And straight away my wages trebled, so I'm really happy.
I'm from India originally.
Okay,
Well,
yeah.
born and brought up from Indian parents. My father was invited over in 1955. He was a border policeman, and the only job he could acquire was to clean toilet. He left my older brother and he left my mum. Then he went back to collect my mum in 1962, and obviously out of toilet cleaning wages he couldn't afford to bring his son, his firstborn son. So he brought my mum, and she was heavily pregnant with me. She nearly aborted with me on the ship, and then I was born very shortly after in January 1963. So I've been negatively impacted by the scandal directly, you know, right down to my son and my grandchildren.
My name is Malcolm Campbell. I was born in Jamaica, Hopewell, near Montego Bay. I then came to UK in 1967. Prior to that, my mother came to England, my father went to Canada, and I stayed with my grandmother, Mama, lovely lady. Years down the line, got married, and here's my lovely daughter, Paulette.
Yeah, that's me.
Yeah, so Paulette Campbell.
Thousands of Jamaicans give a warm welcome to Her Majesty the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh when they visit the island's old capital, Spanish Town.
While we're in Jamaica, my grandmother's claim to fame is cooking for the Queen. Lawn green as well. And in Jamaica at that time, England was like heaven. All the icons of the buses, the guards, Buckingham Palace. So when the Queen came to Jamaica, my grandmother cooked for them. It was like a great big thing, sort of thing.
My name is Pap Hoynen. I was born on the Caribbean island of Trinidad, and life in Trinidad was really good when I was growing up. I came to this country when I was 19, and it started off in Trinidad. After I left school, there was a recruitment drive to encourage young people to come and train as nurses in England, because of course there was a shortage of skilled staff. So I had an interview in Trinidad, and then I was given a place in a hospital in Harrogate. It was the first time that I was going to leave my country at the age of 19. But I think when you're young, you don't realize the enormity of what you're doing. So youth has a different way of looking at things. And so I came at the age of 19, having never worked in my life before, being totally spoiled as a child, very privileged background, not rich, but never went without anything. And so I came here, and I came to Harrogate, and it was really very, very strange. The nurses in the hospital were from the Caribbean, and probably there were some from the Philippines and Hong Kong. That was the majority of the staff. So, and we looked after each other. You know, they looked after me, and then I in turn looked after others. But it was very strange because in those days there were two buses from Knaresborough into Scotland Banks, where we were stationed. And I thought, I've come to this developed country and there's two buses for the day. It was just unbelievable. The people they were okay, yeah. They knew that we were nurses, so they treated us a little bit differently. And I would say Harrogate was predominantly white, it still is. But yeah, so when people saw us, they knew that we were nurses. When I was at Harrogate, I met my husband. So he came to train as a nurse from Mauritius. And my friend and I were going to the dining room for afternoon tea, and we saw this young man there at the reception, and I said, "Oh, let's go and see if he's from Trinidad, you know." And we went, and he said, "Good afternoon." And we thought, no, he's not from Trinidad, you know. So we went and had our afternoon tea, and we went back, and then they told me, oh, his name is Franz Poinen. And, and so maybe the next year we started working together, and, you know, things, one thing led to another. And then we both came to Darlington to further our studies. So that's how I ended up in Darlington. And a couple of our other friends came as well. So we'd known a couple of nurses in Darlington. So, and it was a very good training school at the time. So we came, and then I went on to do my midwifery training. So I trained as a midwife in Darlington. By that time, I'd already got married. I'd had my first child. That's Danielle. And so I started working at North Tees in Stockton as a midwife.
My name is Ian Thompson. My dad arrived in Darlington in 1956. He came with 9 others, as depicted on the beautiful mural that's out there. When he arrived in Southampton, there was obviously, you know, thousands and hundreds of people. We live in Darlington. We always just say, "Dad, why Darlington?" And that's because one of the guys, which is on the photo, a guy called Bill Nicholson, was there in Southampton. He came over to my dad and the group of friends and told them, said, "Look, if you come to Darlington, we have accommodation for you, we have you know, jobs for you, we have training for you." He said, "Look, wherever you're going to go, you're going to have issues. But if you come to Darlington, we have support structures in place, and you know, everything will be taken care of." So the guys just thought, yeah, okay, this is a good idea. And there wasn't no doubt, but I guess one of the doubts was when they were on the train from Southampton off London all the way up to Darlington, thinking this is a long train ride. When they arrived in Darlington, you know, the press was there, and you know, there's a wake-up call, obviously, you know.
As I grew up, I got to know a lot of the people that are on that mural on the front. Grew up a lot around all them people, actually. From what I knew, obviously I was born like several years after he got here. Yeah, he was a good father. Just looked out for us. We just sort of felt safe around him. He was one of them people. Jamaica was home to my dad and my mother. My dad came over, I think 56 or 58, and sent for my mother. I'm not sure of the date then. But yeah, people helped along the way. There were some good people who helped him along the way, and but he was a very clever man himself, my father.
My father is called Neville. He came over from Barbados in 1957. Came, you know, as part of the Windrush generation to help rebuild the country and things like that. Met my mother 2 or 3 years later. I was born in 1961. After my brother, born in 1960, another Neville. And they had 2 other boys, so I'm one of 4 boys, mixed race boys, as we're kind of known back then. The upbringing in the 1960s, particularly with interracial relations, wasn't particularly friendly, let's put it that way. You know, my mother suffered horrendous kind of racial abuse, being white with a black man in those days. So we grew up very much, you know, knowing that we fitted outside of a box right from day one. I mean, that went without saying. You know, people would say, your mum's an N lover, your dad's an N, you know, it was one of these kind of things. So we were in these 2 worlds of, you know, it was a real kind of problem growing up in a sense. But it was a happy upbringing. A single white mother with 4 mixed race boys, quite usual. But we were very fortunate in that we did see our father virtually every day. He lived in the next street, and it was a complex relationship, let's say. But it certainly shaped us to how we are today and the character that I am today. I mean, I've got no doubt about that whatsoever.
When I was 6 years old.
6 years old, okay.
I come on a plane.
My dad's history from Jamaica and my Nana Vita. So to go through the pictures, this is my Nana Vita here. stood with a Jamaican policeman. She's lived most of her life in Jamaica. Here she is again. This is my dad. He grew up in Jamaica. He came over when he was around 6 or 7, I think. And yeah, she brought him up in Luton and then they moved to Middlesbrough. So yeah, this is my great nana, who I'm named after, Eltina, she's called. And this is my great granddad, Samuel. So yeah, that's like a bit. I know these are family friends. And this is again is my dad with his friends Noel and Donat and a family friend's son. And this was my nana's house in Jamaica that they just slowly like extended on over the years. My dad would like send money over and they'd slowly build on it. Yeah, she had a few acres with like a mango trees and orange trees and stuff. And yeah, and this is my dad when he's went back over to Jamaica. In this photo, looking really young. But obviously he loves his culture and he always went back to Jamaica when he could. And like he told me stories where like he'd go with a suitcase of stuff and like all the kids over there and he'd always end up coming back with an empty suitcase because he's given them all, nice clothes and yeah, like I suppose he was part of the community over there. So yeah, and like I say, when he lost his legs, because he's a double amputee, he went over there just after that, and he'd, like you say, tell me stories where he'd lay on the beach and, let the salt water run on his legs and all the little fish and that on the beach and stuff. So yeah, it sounds like it's an amazing place. Did you travel on your own?
I traveled from Jamaica on my own and come here. And to me, it was excitement. I was excited. And looking around at everything. And at the same time, it was snowing. And I said to my mother, "What is this?" The snow. She explained to me, and we drove back to Middlesbrough. My dad had a Morris Oxford car. And it snowed all the way back from London. And I was cold, But they reassured me that everything was all right.
Right, well, I guess start where I was born. So I was born in Lusaka in Zambia, and that was just as a result of my parents moving there for a few years. My dad's an architect, and he was designing an airport there. So we went out, or they went out, I should say, in the late 60s, and then I was born there, and we left when I was 4. So I don't have a lot of memories there, but I do have images and pictures. I know that we went to see the falls. I know that we went on safaris. I know things like that. But I remember things like being taught don't play with the snakes. So it's kind of important when you're under 4. So stuff like that. Tiny little snippets. Yeah, life skills, important. Go and get somebody when you find one. Okay. Which I did, and they throw them away. So that was all right, throw them into the long grass. So that was a very minimal memory of that. My mum was Nigerian. She was born in Nigeria with both Nigerian parents from quite a family that was very influential in the country. And my dad is English, and he was born in Chesley Street in the northeast. So that's how come I'm in the Northeast, and I would say that's probably my main upbringing. That's where I was schooled. So I'm definitely very much have a British approach to things. My mum's influence was obviously very strong because I was very close to her, and she was a very, very special lady.
Well, I came to Darlington. My background basically was studying contemporary dance, ballet, things like that. And I was at the London Studio Centre in London, studying ballet, contemporary dance, drama, that kind of thing. I came to Darlington to visit my brother for a week, 40 years ago now. And I'm still here in Darlington. I never actually went back. Fell in love, got married, 3 lovely daughters, 6 grandchildren now. And I'm very, very, very proud to say that my 3 girls are strong women. You know, they're strong, powerful women, all very independent, very confident. And, you know, as a parent, that's all I ever wanted. And I know that for them, their journey had to be better than mine in terms of, I mean, we were growing up in the 60s and 70s, I mean, we were poor, you know. And it's not something I wanted for my children. I wanted better, and all parents do. I like to think I've given them better. Certainly they're paying me back now in terms of how much I respect them and love them and things like that. So, you know, I'm in a really good place with family. They're very, very conscious about their identity. You know, I think it's really important for any parent to keep their children in touch with their roots and to remind them. I mean, a classic day in our house on Sunday, you know, is they want daddy cooking, which basically means they want chicken and rice and they want Caribbean food. And I love cooking. So, you know, the staple food in our house is primarily kind of Caribbean with a lot of other stuff thrown in.
Well, my name's Tony Squires, or if my mum was here, she would say, no, I christened you Anthony, but to the rest of the world, I'm Tony. My mum came from Grenada in the Caribbean, in the West Indies, the British West Indies, back in the day, as it's called, in 1955 to do nursing in London, St. Stephen's Hospital in Chelsea in London. But when she came in 1955, it was a very different world. Obviously, you had the Notting Hill riots in those days. You had the beginning of the Health Service in 1948, as well as the Windrush, Empire Windrush coming over. And it was just this year that I just suddenly realised how early she arrived. And for her whole life, and unfortunately she passed away with dementia the last few years of her life, but she probably never thought of herself as a Windrush generation, a Windrush pioneer. But now I look back and I realise sort of the penny dropped, and it's only this year, age 56, I think, oh yeah, she was actually. So really, I would just like to join in with your documentary and just introduce my mum. With her older life up in Darlington, she was just a little old black lady in the nursing home here. And, you know, although she was very pleasant and very well mannered, the staff would very often tell me, oh, yes, she's this, oh, she's lovely. And I thought, well, you don't actually know her. You only see a tiny sliver of her personality, what's left. A whole history that mainly she had forgotten. And she was, you know, her memories went back to her childhood growing up in Grenada. So I prepared this with the Alzheimer's Society. It's a thing called This Is Me. And this is a picture of my mum, Joyce Squires. So I'll just show this. And this booklet I prepared, so it's got sort of, you know, a description of, in the first person, it's got a description of my mum's life and what her preference is, where she came from, what her family story was, and this, that, and the other. A little bit for her to remember her own self, but also primarily for the ladies that were looking after her, the staff to be able to read and to remind her. And basically, all of them came to England to do work and training in the NHS. My great aunt was actually the matron of the St. George's Colony Hospital, and she had a British Empire Medal, you know, for her services back in the day. But she encouraged her sister's children to come to England. So my uncle Cecil, who did lab work, hematology and what have you, he went on to become a professor of hematology in New York University. And then all the other, his five sisters, including my mum, they all did general nursing and midwifery, district nursing, what have you. As I said, my mum, this is a picture of my mum when she first arrived in 1955. So wide-eyed, pretty young girl. And bizarrely, she needed a certificate of character from the local police chief. The police or prison records of this colony certify that there's nothing in them concerning my mum. Yes, this was what later became St. Stephen's Hospital in Chelsea. And then these are actual pictures with my mum in them on the ward. There she is at the back. And then down here, this is a graduation day. Here she is here. This is a group, and this is the matron of the day, and the senior sisters, what have you. So this is my mum here, my auntie Thelma, my uncle Cecil in the 1960s in my mum's flat. And this is my mum here in 2008 when I took her to Canada and America to see her siblings. So that's the youngest sister, or one of them, Auntie Yvonne. And there's Uncle Cecil all those years later. But what's that? So 48, nearly 50 years later. Bless him. There's some other pictures of me and my mum, me starting school in London. Some other pictures of the family, pictures of me. She was a beautiful, glamorous lady, very quietly spoken. She had lived her life as a nurse, as an angel, and she loved life, and she had a good sense of humour. So there, Joyce Kathleen Squires from Grenada, 1955. Passed away 6 years ago, and I'm her son, Anthony Squires. Or you can call me Tony. Thank you.
When I first learnt about Arthur Wharton, I was at the Taste of Africa Awards, and there was a little brochure which is on display in this hall at the minute. And inside was just a very small paragraph about Arthur Wharton. And I thought, my goodness me, how can it be that this guy exists and I've never heard of him? You know, I champion greatness, I champion black history, I champion all levels of adversity and equality and things like that. And I thought, you know what, I'm a bit of an artist, I'll go and paint a tribute. So I went back to my little old shop in Darlington called Drum, very funky shop. If you imagine like a tree trunk carved into a sun lounger, things like that, you know. And I started painting a picture, and some member of the public came in and said, you know, who's this guy you're painting? This is Arthur Wharton. And I'm like, wow, have you never heard of him? Well, I'm not surprised, neither have I, and I'm all excited and over-enthusiastic about this story. Next day, the Northern Echo came in and they'd done an interview with me about it, and they'd published this thing, you know, a local businessman starts campaign to honour Arthur Wharton, and it wasn't a campaign. It was just me doing a little something. Yeah. And from that day on, I thought, you know what, I might as well have a campaign. I mean, nobody's championed him properly so far. There's been elements, but people have taken the foot off the gas with him. I think I'm going to put the cherry on their cake, and I just went on this journey. And the ironic thing, or the wonderful thing, I prefer to call it, that's been born out of all of that, is that through Arthur's legacy, there are so many transferables, you know, similarities between the disabled, between sexuality, between LGBTQ+, the black and brown community, and so on. And there's so many transferable elements that Arthur's story just weaves them all together. So what you have is this mash of fair play in life. If you achieve, you should be patted on the back. Arthur never got that. Well, he's getting it now, and he's getting it large because we, the community, have come together. I say at last, you know, it's been a really, really hard journey, speaking with the highest echelons in the order of world football, with FIFA, UEFA, the PFA, the FA, people like Sepp Blatter, Michel Platini, and David Bernstein. You know, when you're meeting these people and you're trying to get them to do the right thing by one of their own, that's the key. It's their responsibility. It shouldn't be mine. And that's really the message I'm getting across. You need to do this for one of your own. How come it's not in your consciousness? the simple ask that I give of people is that, you know, when they ask me, why am I doing this? It's to get as many people across the globe aware of, as aware as possible of Arthur's story, because it's an important one. It's an important one. You know, it represents the beginning of the black presence in sport, certainly in this country. But in terms of his record and trailblazing achievements, I mean, there has never been and there will never be anyone like him. He's remarkable. And the world is starting to waken up to that now, thanks to the work that we do and the work of others who also spread Arthur's name, you know. The Windrush mural, how did that come about? Well, 75th anniversary. I mean, we've been spending the last 2 or 3 years just changing our walls constantly. So you had Ghana independence, the Lionesses, the England men's football team during the Euros, all kinds of positive messaging on the walls. And obviously, my father being from Barbados, the opportunity to celebrate Windrush and the black and brown community in this community, I mean, absolute no-brainer, that's the first thing. So the question was, how? We knew why. We knew we were going to do it. The question is, what was it going to be? What would it represent? And I think it was Ian Thompson who showed me this photograph of the first arrivals in 1956, and my God, goodness me, when I saw that picture, I just knew we actually have that community among us here. Let's celebrate it firsthand with the families. Let's make this really iconic. So I got hold of one of our kind of stalwart fans, you know, street artist, Dan Walls, Illumination Art is his company. And I just knew that he'd come up with something. And he came up with just the exact vibe and feel that we wanted to encapsulate the dignity of our community. Not just our community for the sake of it. It's the dignity, the respect. It needed to be big, it needed to be bold, it needed to show that we were told that these streets were paved with gold, but not for us because we're from across the sea. That's what that represents. That's why we then made the decision to fly the Windrush flag with the mayor of the town, and to have representations of all of those Caribbean communities that came over during Windrush. So we flew the Barbados flag, the Trinidadian flag, we flew, you know, the Bahamian flag, and so on and so forth. In fact, we actually flew an African flag, we flew the Nigerian flag and the Zimbabwean flag, because none of us will forget that without Africa, there is no Caribbean, really. So it's really important when acknowledging Windrush that we acknowledge our African brothers and sisters of the entire continent of Africa, because we're from all over the place. You go back to the beginning to look at how far we've come now. This is why Arthur's story and this Arthur Wharton Foundation building is really important, because the yardstick of how far we've come in terms of racism in football and in sport and in athletics can be measured from 1883 when Arthur Wharton first came to Darlington, you know, and played his football and ran here. And then you look at how far we've come in terms of racism. There's the beginning, here's today. Hence our motto, connecting the present, that's us right now, connecting the present to the past for the future. What we're learning from it. Whatever we learn from it, that's what we need to carry into the future. And that is what will make a change in our society.
What do you think about the compensation scheme now, people talking about it? Do you think that there's been enough effort made by the government to raise awareness about it? Do you think, what are your thoughts on?
Well, I don't think any amount of compensation can compensate for what happened. I'm comforted in the knowledge that as I'm second generation, I'm comforted to see today that third and fourth generation are here, getting to know about their heritage and what actually happened to their distant and close relatives. You know, it's the same as I feel about reparations. for slavery, no amounts of money will compensate for that. That first world developed nations have built their wealth on people of colour, both in the colonies and through slavery. So, and we shouldn't be allowed to forget, ever, you know.
Hi, my name's Katie Wilson Downey. I used to live in Middlesbrough. I currently live in London, and I'm Jamaican and English. My father come in the Windrush era from Jamaica, invited by the royal family to come and serve in this country and help develop the nation after World War II. Been supporting my father, you know, with his issues that he faced due to the Windrush scandal. And as a result of that, I've learned a lot of things about what he's been through and other people who come in that time. You know, I started to kind of find out about the Windrush compensation scheme. And once I found out about it and researched it, I supported my father to apply successfully. And then following that, me and my siblings applied successfully. And now we're going around telling everybody how to apply to the scheme, because we think, you know, it's very important that people get paid due to what they've been through. We make the struggle look good, and a lot of us have been through things, but we never always kind of acknowledge what we've been through.
So when I was little, like really little, I don't recall anything. It was great, loved it. I think the first bit that I can remember is when we lived in Germany, and we lived there for, was it about 4 years?
Yeah.
It was about 4 years we lived in Germany, Gütersloh.
Oh, yeah, for Gütersloh.
It was great. Loved that place. Loved the school. Loved everything about it. Life was amazing. Camped in the woods, didn't we? I was one of those kids.
Anything she asked me, see, I got this perception in my head. If a child asks you something, then do it with them, because it's an experience for life. So she was asking about, can she camp in the woods, and so I demonstrated practically.
Yeah.
Sorry to butt in.
So we used to do all sorts, and really lucky because obviously we were in Germany, you're in the middle of Europe, aren't you? So we travelled around most of Europe with a old-fashioned caravan camper. Yeah, I was looking them up online the other day, actually. You can still get them. And then when we moved back to England, when I was 9, that was the first time I really encountered racism, and it wasn't very nice at all. I went to the village school in Cowden, which is near Bishop Auckland, and nobody took a liking to me, basically. I had a couple of friends around the houses, didn't I, in the village, but at the school, people were horrible to me at the school. The teachers were horrible to me at the school. I remember one instance where me and my friend were walking to the corner shop, and these kids, there's like a playground. So there's 2 roads, one goes up that way, one goes up that way, but they kind of run parallel in Cowden. And there's like what they called the rec, which was like the play area. And there were some kids in there that were a lot older than us. I think I must have been about 12 or 13 at the time. And they were just shouting loads of horrible names at me and slurs, and I dared to turn around to them and tell them that they sounded like a broken record. Probably not the smartest thing to do, because they followed us to the shop, and they were waiting outside for us, so I had to ask the shopkeeper if I could ring home to get Dad to come and get us from the shop. But they soon scarpered when they saw him.
No. I was a bit mad at the time. It did make me a bit mad, because I went up there and we call it, I have this thing, it doesn't matter who, what you are, you should be in any part of the world if you so desire, because the world's designed for all humans. And I went up to the shop and I was calling them over, and I says, come here, I need to have a chat with you, because I thought I could converse with them and make them realize what they were doing.
The thing that has been instilled in, I speak for my family, was about integrity, about honor, about standing up for yourself and your rights. And this was born from a story that my dad recalled to us when he was driving the buses. he was driving around the circuit, and he was driving up North Road, and what happened was the zebra crossing. So as a bus, came to stop at the zebra crossing, people walking by, and one of the last pedestrians to walk by was a woman. And then when she got halfway in front of the bus, she just stopped in front of the bus. And it was just like stopped, and she was pausing, and my dad was thinking, what's going on here? And she was looking at the bus, looking at my dad, and my dad was like, okay, move, 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 she was still stuck there. My dad beeped the horn, and eventually, she moved out the way, and my dad just shook his head and just thought, some people are crazy, whatever, and carried on, finished his route. And then when he went back to the depot, he got called into the manager's office. And the manager said to him that it's been recalled to him that there was an accident, a near accident, where a woman was nearly hit on the road, My dad had no situation like that. He said, no, I think he got the wrong bus. It wasn't me. He said, yes, it was definitely you. Up North Road, there was a stop at a zebra crossing where you nearly hit this woman. My dad just, recalled the same woman and described the woman, and it was the same woman. And my dad, told the manager exactly what happened, how he stopped, not to a sudden halt, he saw it in good time. Turns out that this woman was the wife of the supervisor. And my dad was ordered to apologize. My dad said, apologize for what? I haven't done anything. There was nothing happened. I told you what happened. But the manager was adamant that, my dad either apologize or he'd have to consider his future. And my dad, at that moment, now you can think about this, this was early 60s, might be late 50s, 7 children. Must have been, early 60s, mid 60s, 7 children. And with this situation, and my dad resigned on the spot. He came home, explained to the family, the community, the guys who you saw on the photograph on the mural, they all chipped in to support my dad, because my dad took himself to college to undertake an engineering course. And, eventually, after he qualified, he got a job in Cummins, the engineering plant. And, if that doesn't instill in you to fight for your rights and, defend what is yours, then I guess nothing will.
In the 70s, when I saw people with hair like mine, it would have been rare, super rare. Never occurred to me to do anything else to my hair. It wasn't a thing because I didn't have that community. So when we visited London, when we visited family in the south, it'd be like, oh, you've kept your hair natural, you've kept your hair natural. And I was thinking, well, what else would I do? And now I'm in my 50s and I come across, everybody's left their hair like this. And it's like, how come I never saw anybody with hair like mine when I was younger? Why didn't that happen? But that was, again, me having a different experience of being black because of where I was brought up, because of my environment, because of the diversity or lack of diversity that was around me. I can remember going to Newcastle shopping and seeing the right-wing group in the skinhead 6-foot guys standing across the entranceway to the Eldon Square, trying to intimidate you from walking through between them. But then I also remember things like when we were in Zambia, one of the places we didn't visit was South Africa because it was still apartheid. So it's like everywhere you go, you hit it. It doesn't matter where you are in the world. You come across it just in various forms.
Growing up, I remember seeing this poster of this policeman arresting this guy with dreadlocks. And the caption said something like, you've only stopped me because I'm black. And the police headline was, can you handle this situation? And I'm going to hold my hand up to say that I grew up thinking, when I was such a young age, that black people did kind of use that sort of get-out clause. Oh, you've been stopped because I'm black, but really, they were bad boys and stuff, until, you have the first-hand experience, and as you're growing up, you're thinking, oh, yeah. You see how the jigsaw fits now. I've been stopped 25 times by the police in my car, and I've never done anything wrong. They've just been random stops. I've heard every single excuse from, you know, a car like this has been stolen. There's been some unusual activity in the area. Is this your car? Where are you going? Some crazy ones as well, such as it's unusual for Fiesta to be driven this late at night. That was 9:30 on a summer's evening as well. And I think one of the worst times that I had was, I think it was back in 2005, 2006. I was stopped by the police. I was driving with my girlfriend at the time, and I was driving past a petrol station, and a police car nearly came and, you know, came out of the petrol station, never even stopped the junction. So we both skidded to a halt. She held her hand up, the WPC was driving, and I was like, yeah, fine, no problem at all. She reversed, and I carried on driving. And so she eventually, you know, because she was turning right, so when she saw me, she started to turn left now, you know, and she's following me all the way from the east end, you know, where I was living, to the west end, where she lived, or where her parents lived. And, you know, I was looking in the wing mirror saying, what they're doing, they're still following me. And I remember looking in the wing mirror, and I forgot the turn off. And what happened was I had to do a U-turn. So I just did a U-turn. That's when the blue light came on. And I stopped the car, and I said, okay. And I said to my partner, girlfriend at the time, I said, sorry about this, because this time we were stop number, I can't remember now, 20-something. And you become assertive to these things. You know, you can't just like accept it. And the WPC who was driving came over, and she screamed at me, turn the engine up, turn the music up, and get out of the car right now. And I was like, whoa, but she screamed it so much. I was like, whoa, I said, who are you talking to? She said, you heard me, do as I say now. And I said, no, I'm not doing a thing until you learn how to talk to me with some respect. And she said, right, I'm calling for backup. And that's how it escalated, from her first words to her calling for backup. And then she went in the car to call for backup, and her partner came out of the car, said, excuse me, sir, do you mind turning off the engine? You know? And I said, what for? He said, I want to ask you some questions. I said, well, ask me some questions then now. You know? He said, sir, and by this time, a neighbour came out, because apparently we were making a commotion, and said, listen, will you guys be quiet? I've got children trying to get into bed. And so the policeman, passenger, told me to drive over the other side of the road. I said, why? He said, oh, it's quiet, it's bigger over there, it's more space and we can talk. I said, just ask them questions, I'll be on my way. He said, look, just do that. So I drove over the other side of the road, but he didn't tell her that I was driving over the other side of the road. So she thought I was driving off. So she got in a car and came up to me, and when I say rammed me, didn't touch my car, but forced me onto the pavement. So I was on the pavement, I stopped the car, and she got the car. And she said, I told you to get the car over here. And I said, if you listen to your partner, he told me to come over here. And he came over, no, that was me, I told him to come over there, you know. And he said, right, get in the back of that police car now. I said, told you, I'm not doing a thing until you learn to talk to me with some respect. And so the guy came over, sir, can you come in the back of the police car? I said, why? Ask me some questions, I'll be on my way. So this is the standard procedure. It's not, but, you know, I didn't realise at the time. So I got in the back of the police car, and I was a qualified magistrate this time. So I called my magistrate mentor, and I called another magistrate colleague of mine to tell them what happened, to say, look, I'm not doing anything wrong. I haven't been smoking, I don't smoke. You know, I haven't been drinking, I haven't been speeding. They're just harassing me. So they both told me that you cannot tell them that you're a magistrate. Just get the badge numbers, and then you can file a complaint. So I did that. So when I was in the police car, the backup came, and dog section, you know, the two burly sergeants came out of the car. One stood at either side of the car, and I was in the back of the police car. Didn't say anything to me, and just started writing out what we call a producer. But the proper name for it is a Home Office Road Transport 1, so HORT1. And in the legal profession, it's called a HORTY. And so the guy who was writing it, the passenger, he said, what's your name? I said, why do you want to know my name? He said, I want to give you this. So I said, Sergeant, can you look at this, please? They're not following proper instructions. And the sergeant bent down and said, what do you mean? He said, well, he's given me a horsey here, and he hasn't even asked whether I have my documents in my car, which would save all this hassle. And when I said that, they just thought, okay, he's someone from the legal profession now. And the policewoman, who was only screamed at me twice, that's the only time I've heard from her, she just turned around in such a delicate, low voice saying, oh, are you a copper then? You know, all nice and sweet, you know, and I was like riled up, but I was trying to be cool. And I said, listen, love, and I expressed love because I wanted to annoy her, you know. I said, listen, love, doesn't matter who I am, but let me tell you something, I am taking this all the way to Akeley Heads. And as soon as I said that, she just sunk in her seat like that, you know. And the two burly sergeants outside the car said, sir, or one of them said, sir, this is not racism, you know. I said, wait a second, hang on a second, who said anything about race? I've been stopped because I've been driving all over the place, which you know is a very serious crime, being sinful, of course, you know. And then the guy said, sir, I don't have to give you this. I said, no, you give me that because I want evidence that, you know, you've stopped me illegally for no other reason but to harass me, you know. And the sergeant opened the car and said, okay, sir, come on, let's go back to your car. He said, sir, please, it's not racism. So I stopped. I said, look, you know it's racism because at the time I had a brand new car, it was like a month old. I said, look, you see a black guy in a brand new car, it doesn't compute to you. And, you know, went to the police station, filed a complaint, went to Akeley Heads, and the investigation, it was flawed in every sense of the way, you know. And obviously there was no case to answer, they didn't do anything wrong. They actually said, and I've still got the letter at home, said that they didn't even know that I was black, you know, because the sun was reflecting on the car windshield. They didn't realise that I was black until they came to the car. And, you know, but this was accepted by the authorities and stuff, and but I'm still just as assertive, you know, if I ever get stopped again, because, you know, police have no need to harass anyone like that anyway, never mind people of colour.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what it is, whether it was just an individual situation or whether it was just, like I say, my mum was she was an amazing woman. Yeah. And I don't know if it's just her that made me just feel totally, well, I am who I am. I was probably even more confident in my 20s than I am now. Yeah. Because I had her there, and I also just was like, well, this is who I am. And I guess also, I can remember, I don't know if this is on film, I remember visiting my gran, and so that would have been between the ages of 4 and 6, and going out on the streets where she lived to play with the kids there. And they weren't nice. No. So all these kids I had gone back to, or I hadn't gone back to, my family had gone back to in Washington who knew us already. We were all this just group. So when I was at my gran's, I'd gone out. And I can remember kids saying, you're dirty. You need to wash your face. You can't play with us. And going back to my gran's house, really upset. Because that was probably my first proper experience of children my age being like that. I could hear adults, but that was the first time that the kids were rejecting me because of the colour of my skin.
No.
No, she's right. Yeah, core letters, but personal goals is one, passing that the first one was coming to UK and passing that parachute course, 10 miles with kit and so on, and meeting timings, and taking to Wales for a week, and we're just constantly on the go. And they had a thing called VW, voluntary withdrawal. So any time you could put your hand up and say, I want to get out of it. But I got to that. The next achievement while I was in the forces is to become a warrant officer on the squadron. And the other great achievement, there's a few actually, is with the reserves, because I spent 18 years in the reserve. I've got a private pilot license, which thanks to Polar Helicopters at Manston, Kent, last September I passed my license flying the R-22, Robinson R-22 helicopters. Just a little two-seater. No big pilot, just a private pilot sort of thing. So yeah, that's those are the achievements. And the biggie is making sure I kept my family together, and I've come out and they've, you know what I mean, they're safe and secure, safe and secure. It's not, well, it's flicking the dice when you join the force, isn't it? You don't know if you're gonna get injured. You don't know if you're gonna see your family again, depending on the environment that you go into, and so it is a big goal to finish at the end, which I'm retired now, and still have your family and still be able to see them and converse with them. So I mean, so yeah.
And you only ever missed one Christmas, didn't you?
Yeah.
Jeez, my greatest achievement. Do you know what? No matter all the accolades, my education, I've got a master's degree, I'm a magistrate, but I think my greatest ever achievement was reading the eulogy for my dad. To me, he was a special person, and when the vicar came to the house and talked about the order of service, there was me and Mum going through the order of service and everything, The vicar said, right, do you ever want to speak to the eulogy? And I said, yes, me. And Mum said, no, not you, I'm the younger son. And she said, no, like, you're too emotional, you won't. I said, no, I want to do it. And, I was adamant that I was going to read that eulogy. And Mum looked at me and just said, yeah, okay, yeah, Ian. And I read that, and I've still got the print of what I read and everything, and I just found that so special. And it's just, I don't know, it's the legacy of the generation of not just my dad, but the dads who came to Darlington, the dads who came to, the people who came, from the Caribbean, from Africa, from all over the world, to the UK to help build, not just the legacy, but the infrastructure of what we see today, what we take for granted, cannot be ignored. And I think it mirrors the link to the centre because, what Arthur Wharton did and his sense of achievement, and it's spectacular that at long last he's being recognised for what he's done and what he's accomplished. I mean, if he was alive now and achieved what he did, people hold Usain Bolt as, a demigod. But Arthur Wharton, what he did was just be something else. My greatest sports person in the world is Muhammad Ali. I think he was a true champion. And but Arthur Wharton would, I think, in his day would surpass that. So, I'm happy to support Sean and work with Sean to help develop this centre. And I just hope it just goes, from strength to strength.
We never always kind of acknowledge what we've been through, and thankfully the UK government have finally kind of offered a Windrush compensation scheme to Windrush victims, and I think that everybody who is entitled should be paid, and the only true way to know whether you're entitled is to make an application so long as you meet the basic criteria, which is arriving in the UK from any British Commonwealth nation, not just Caribbean nations, not just African nations, but there's also other non-black nations on there as well. Ask your family members, did you come from a British Commonwealth nation before the 1st of January 1973, or did you settle before the 31st of December 1988? And if the answer is yes, then you need to be showing them the application forms for the Windrush compensation scheme.
Well, first thing is, I was a kind of stargazer. I love looking at the sky. And especially at nights when the stars are out in full bloom, you can see millions of stars. And there is a little cluster we call the Seven Sisters. And you always look at that. And then there is times when you see a shooting star. And they say you should make a wish when you see a shooting star. And I used to follow the moon, the first quarter, then the half, then the 3/4, then the full moon. You know, and if you're in a place where there's no street lights, you get the full light of the moon, you know. So I loved that. And the blue skies, and I used to watch the clouds. I still do watch the clouds because the formation, you know, this minute it looks like somebody, and another minute it look like an island, and you know, and it just keep moving. And then I used to have this wish to get a very sophisticated camera to get a perfect sunset and a perfect sunrise, you know, because gosh, that's so beautiful. And the colors, when you look at the sunset, it's like you can go there, you know. And the other thing is like hearing the rain on the roof. Gosh, especially at nights, it can put you to sleep. The house can be leaking, yes, but as long as your bed is not getting wet, it's all right, you know. But here, even on Sunday when we had this big shower, I didn't realize it was raining until I looked through the window. I couldn't hear it, you know. So that's another thing I miss. And strange enough to hear the thunder, this big clap, and you expect something to just burst out, you know. And then there's the lightning, which it might sound crazy, but when you look at the lightning sometimes, fork lightning, I think they call it, when it's, you know, spring all over. It's a bit intriguing. I could be crazy, but, you know, I like nature. That's my part of nature. All these things that I mentioned, I really miss, you know. And of course, the freedom and easy access to rivers and the sea. And I will recommend our seashores to everybody because the waters are so clear and blue, and I mean, you can walk sometimes very far out before you get too deep in the water. So you see the sand, and you can sit on the beach and see the fishes dancing, you know. All them things I miss. I miss that. But I try to adjust. I don't think you ever get used to the winter. Because every time winter comes, oh my gosh, all the cardigans and the coats and the boots and scarf and oh God. But I'm alive. And then this past year has been a real challenge because I came back from holidays in July last year, and a very tiny little itch I had under my left arm started really hurting and swelling up. Went to my GP, got referred to the breast clinic, and there it was, cancer. So I got my surgery on the 27th of September 2022, and it was supposed to be a day surgery. Tuesday morning I got it and went in the recovery ward. But Wednesday, I started feeling really sick. And then Wednesday night, it was a marathon, you know. I heard them calling me one time and say, crash, crash. And calling my name. And then I came round and I don't know what happened. I had to change the bed because it was all wet. And then heard them say, crash, crash again. And loads of people around me. And then after I was kind of coming round again, they moved me. And it was like I was swimming in blood. I thank God. So they stabilized me and thing, and they took me back to theatre Thursday morning. So they had to do all sorts again and get me back in the ward, put in a catheter. And I had 4 units of blood. So that shows how much blood I lost, you know. And I ended up staying in hospital for 10 days. But I came out and I'm battling it now, you know. All sorts of side effects from the chemo and the radiotherapy, but I'm still going. Very slowly, but surely. I have been discharged from the breast clinic and the cancer clinic, which means I am cancer clear, which is such good news, and I am really grateful to be alive and say well, because it was touch and go a few months ago. And I should also say thank you to all my friends, my family, my supporters, who has been really good and kind and seeking after my well-being. And my new friends from Taste of Africa, Elvis and Kayla, and whoever I forget to mention, you know who you are. All the team that has worked on this documentary. I am so glad to have met you, and I know I can say you are my new friends, which I will treasure.